The moment the police car screeched to a stop, the teenager knew something was wrong. He had only taken a few steps into the neighborhood park when officers rushed toward him, hands tense on their belts, eyes sharpened with suspicion he didn't understand. Within seconds, he was surrounded, questioned, and treated like a threat though he hadn't done a single thing. And as the officers grew more aggressive, one chilling thought echoed in his mind. Why was simply existing in his own community suddenly a crime? What happened next would expose a truth far bigger than this moment, and far more disturbing. As we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening. Your support means everything. Afternoon in the park twisted into a moment he would never forget. The teenager's life had been almost painfully ordinary. He was the kind of kid who blended into the background, quiet, observant, always trying not to take up too much space in a society that scrutinized him the second he stepped outside his front door. He had learned the small calculations required to survive, how to soften his facial expressions, where to keep his hands, how to make himself appear non-threatening in public spaces. Despite everything, he carried a gentleness that his mother always said came from his grandfather, an old soul, she called it. He preferred early mornings and late evenings, the stillness before and after the world stirred. While other teens bounced between group chats and weekend hangouts, he found comfort in solitary rituals, slow walks, quiet parks, and moments of stillness people often rushed past. The park had always been his sanctuary, a place where he felt free, a place where kids played without being judged, where joggers moved past with friendly nods, where he could breathe without feeling watched. That morning had been simple and predictable. A quiet breakfast, a packed backpack, and a calm walk down familiar streets. There were no signs that the day would be different. No warnings about what waited in the park. No foreshadowing of the fear, humiliation, or shock that would erupt within minutes. His neighborhood had its problems, unspoken rules, and invisible boundaries. He was used to the suspicious glances, the strangers locking their car doors at the sight of him, the store clerks tracking him with their eyes. These were the tiny cracks in the pavement he learned to step around. They were part of his world. Always there, always waiting. Lately, though, the atmosphere had shifted. Patrol cars lingered a little too long. Neighborhood meetings mentioned safety measures without saying what or who they were really concerned about. People spoke with tones sharpened by fear. Still, he didn't let any of that ruin his morning. He simply wanted to reset before another school week. As he entered the park, the breeze felt light, the sun warm, the world quiet. Families sat on benches, children laughed, dog walkers strolled. Everything looked normal. But near the entrance, a patrol car sat angled toward the park, with a clear view of everyone coming and going. It didn't move. It didn't turn away. He tried to brush off the knees creeping into his stomach. He stepped deeper into the park, hoping the tension would fade. But the air shifted just slightly, just enough to raise the hairs on his arms. He didn't know it yet, but someone nearby had already decided he didn't belong. And that silent judgment was about to ignite something far bigger than a simple walk on a peaceful afternoon. The deeper he walked into the park, the heavier the uneasiness became. It clung to him like a shadow he couldn't escape. He glanced back. The patrol car hadn't moved. The officer inside was still watching, gaze steady and unyielding. He tried to ignore it, focusing on the pond ahead, on the quiet he'd come to find. But the crunch of gravel behind him shattered that fragile peace. A patrol car door slammed shut. Heavy footsteps followed. He turned, heart pounding, and saw an officer approaching with the rigid, confrontational stance of someone anticipating danger. That hand, resting near the holster, that cold, assessing stare, that silent accusation. He froze. His mind raced for an explanation that didn't exist. He was just walking, just breathing, just being here. The officer questioned him, harsh tone, clipped words, suspicion dripping from every syllable. Why was he there? What was he doing? Why did he look nervous? Nervous. Of course he was nervous. Anyone would be. But explaining fear to someone who believed you were the threat felt like trying to hold back a storm with bare hands. He answered softly, carefully, the way he'd been taught. The officer's expression didn't soften. Instead, he demanded identification. The teenager hesitated not because he had anything to hide, but because he knew hesitation itself could be misread. He reached into his backpack slowly, narrating every movement, hoping it would keep the officer calm. But tension only grew. Then more officers arrived. One patrol car, then two, then three. Suddenly he was surrounded, a semicircle of authority tightening around him like a trap. Their excuses came quickly, loitering, matching a vague description, suspicious behavior, trespassing. Each claim contradicted the last. None made sense even then. The command, the one he'd feared hearing his entire life, "Put your hands behind your back." His breath caught. His chest tightened. The humiliation washed over him. He wasn't resisting. He wasn't arguing. He wasn't doing anything except existing in the wrong skin, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. The officer stepped behind him, cuffs in hand, but then a voice cut through the tension. Clear, firm, authoritative. A man stepped forward, well-dressed, composed, instantly recognizable. He had been watching long enough. The officers stiffened. The boy didn't yet understand who the man was, but something about him radiated certainty. He questioned the officers, pressed them, cornered them with logic they couldn't outrun, and then he revealed his identity. United States Senator. The officers' faces drained. Their confidence evaporated. Everything shifted as panic replaced power. The senator demanded justification. They stumbled over excuses. He pushed harder. Their contradictions tangled like wires sparking under pressure. Then came the question that detonated their narrative. What specific criminal activity are you detaining this minor for? Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Finally, the lead officer muttered, "No. Criminal activity." The crowd reacted. Phones recorded. Murmurs spread. The truth was exposed into words that could no longer be buried. The senator stepped forward, documenting everything, his voice calm but deadly serious. He announced his intention to file official civil rights complaints, to request investigations, to pursue accountability. The officers cracked under the pressure. Excuses failed. Postures crumbled. Power slipped away. And as they retreated, humiliated and shaken, the boy realized the moment hadn't reached its end. This wasn't the resolution. This was the spark before the explosion. The real consequences were still coming. Asterisk. The senator positioned himself directly between the trembling boy and the officers who had nearly handcuffed him without cause. His presence wasn't loud, but it was commanding, steady as stone, and wavering as truth. With the crowd watching and cameras recording, he dismantled every claim the officers attempted to cling to. No probable cause. No matching suspect. No criminal behavior. Nothing but bias, and the senator named it plainly. He filmed their badges. He filmed their shifting expressions. He filmed their collapsing explanations. His narration was calm, methodical, and devastating. Then he delivered the blow none of them saw coming. Formal complaints, oversight investigations, department audits, committee involvement, their careers, their reputations, their unchecked authority suddenly under threat. The lead officer swallowed hard. Another stepped back, pale. A third stared at the ground. The power had flipped. Completely. Irrevocably. The senator turned to the boy, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. He didn't use sympathy or theatrics, just truth. Truth that the boy deserved to hear. Truth the officers needed to face. The senator declared, for everyone to hear, this young man is a citizen, a child, a resident of this neighborhood. He had every right to be here. The only people who crossed the line today were the ones wearing badges. Not one officer dared reply. They retreated, shaken, as if fleeing from the consequences now looming over them. The patrol cars rolled away. Quiet settled over the park, but the boy's heart still thundered with adrenaline. Something inside him shifted. A spark he hadn't felt before. Not victory, but validation. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't overreacting. He wasn't imagining the danger. The world had finally witnessed what he had lived with for years. But the climax didn't end with the officers leaving. It ended with a realization the boy felt deep in his bones. If a U.S. senator had to intervene to protect his basic rights, what did that say about the world he lived in? Asterisk. The footage spread across social media within hours. A local incident became a national conversation. Commentators analyzed it. Community leaders condemned it. Parents saw their own children in the boy's fear. People were no longer willing to accept misunderstanding as an excuse. The police department scrambled. Statements were released. Investigations opened. Officers suspended. Policies reviewed. Training expanded. Oversight committees launched inquiries. The lead officer faced a disciplinary hearing. For the first time, Consequences weren't quietly buried but for the boy. The most profound effects were internal. He met with counselors, spoke with community advocates, and slowly began to process the trauma, the what-ifs, the too close moments.